I'm Dr. Ray Middleton. I help people by delivering great training. Here's an example episode from one of my training courses explaining the Power Threat Meaning Framework. I'm a member of the Power Threat Meaning Framework Committee, and these materials were developed in conjunction with the committee. The name of this framework is Power Threat Meaning, so making meaning is an important part of this approach. So next, I will explain another question the framework asks: what sense or meaning did I make of these experiences? Experiences happen to everyone all the time. If an experience is significant or puzzling to us, we usually go through a process of trying to make sense of it. We're making meaning out of them so they can fit into our life story. Sometimes meaning making out of an experience is easy, but at other times the meaning making is far away and hard to grasp. We might make sense of it in one way and when it first happens, but then we're not quite settled on that, and we revisit that experience later and we revise our understanding of what happened. If we're not satisfied with the explanation, and we might try another way to make sense of it. Like trying on different clothes for size, we try different explanations on to see how well they fit the facts, or we try different stories or narratives to fit the experience into, to think, well, does this make sense? Does this explain what's happened to me? We might talk with someone else to try to make sense of what's happened. So getting better can involve changing the meaning we're making of experiences that we've had or are currently having. However, it can be difficult to change the sense we make or the meaning making for several reasons. It might be emotionally uncomfortable to let some of our old ways of thinking about what happened to us go and to try on some new ways of making sense of what happened. The meanings we make of experiences will be shaped from our very earliest experiences of other people caring for us, even before we could form words and language. And we learnt language before then. We may have been fortunate and experienced the sense that we were loved, protected and safe before we formed language from the people around us. That basic emotional sense of self-worth we might have picked up before we formed language, and we could then go out and explore the world confidently, but knowing that we could return to a safe relational place at home to reflect on how our adventuring into the world has gone. And that's some people's experience of early life. But not everybody has that degree of positive, emotionally caring relationships as a safe space to springboard and dive out from to explore life and reflect on life. Instead, we may be to some degree have felt unwanted, neglected, hurt or unsafe. That early experience before we formed language would shape our experience of others as we developed. For many of us, it is a mixture of positive and negative early experiences that form our sense of self, how we feel about ourselves. To some degree, we may have felt safe and loved, combined with some degree of feeling unsafe, neglected, hurt. So there's a wide variety of early experiences of attaching to caring adults that shape the way we go on to make sense of life later when we start to form language and words and start to work out what stories are available in our culture to make sense of our experiences. As we grow up, we learn words and language, don't we? We also access a range of popular and powerful explanations in stories and discourses and narratives that are circulating in our culture and media. The process of making sense often involves other people, either listening to us or other people maybe telling us their opinion and explaining to us, why they think we're experiencing something. That might be helpful, might be unhelpful to have an explanation imposed on us. But we've got to decide whether we believe that or not. When we feel distressed, we try to make sense of it and we try to give it meaning. For example, we may make sense of it by believing it is because we are trapped or we have failed or been defeated in some way, or because we make sense of a distressing experience or an unusual experience. We're trying to make sense of it. We might eventually think, it's because we feel inferior to someone else, might be an explanation, or guilty, or we feel responsible for something we've done wrong. This might weave its way into thinking, I wonder why I'm feeling this way, or something we've not done, we might feel guilty about that, or we may make sense of a confusing, unusual experience or unusual thoughts as due to being betrayed by someone we trusted. These are all explanations that we would think, well, why am I feeling and thinking, having this unusual experience, is it because I feel betrayed? Or we may make sense and think, well, we've been humiliated or shamed in public, and that's why, for example, I have this uncomfortable feeling when I'm with other people or out in public, because I feel that this might happen again. And that could fit for us as a narrative explanation of why we're having this unusual kind of unsafe feeling in maybe a public area like a shopping I don't really go to them, but shopping malls, whatever we call them, or some unfair and unjust thing that been done to us might be a way to explain like why I feel this way, why I feel angry. But sometimes our distress or unusual experiences are harder to explain. It's not straightforward. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. When it's harder, we may think of ourselves in unusual ways, to make sense of this. We might think we're an alien, for example, to try and make sense of a story that makes sense of our unusual experience. We might think we're different, abnormal, or contaminated in some way. That's an explanation. Makes sense of it, that we're trying to explain this. We might change our mind later, but it's as a way to try to explain our emotions and thoughts. We can see many ways we might make sense of uncomfortable feelings, such as we've been excluded or isolated or feel lonely, and that's why we're having this experience. We might feel overwhelmed or hopeless, or we might feel invaded by something, or someone else has invaded us, like a powerful idea, and that we're thinking, like a powerful idea like we're unlovable. We might feel we have been invaded by this feeling. People are struggling with experiences and thoughts, and they're trying to make sense of them. And these are just a range of ways we might make sense of things. When we feel distressed, there are other explanations we might reach for, depending on our context and what's going on in our life and the people around us. Such as thinking, let's have a think about this. We might feel this way because we're unsafe, and that might be an understandable explanation. Or we might feel attacked or rejected or abandoned. As we grow up, we may tend to go to some of these explanations more often than others, habitually, because we're shaped and influenced by our past experiences, aren't we? For example, we may tend to feel trapped when we feel uncomfortable if we've had that experience in our past of being trapped in some situation which was traumatizing for us and we couldn't get away from it. So we might feel, oh, I'm feeling trapped now. We reach for those explanations that we've got some experience of. That's understandable. So the way we interpret our present world, ourself and other people, will be influenced to some extent by our history of past explanations that have made sense to us. And the way people around us tend to make sense of distress will also influence us. However, the good news is we can change the sense or meaning that we make of experiences, and I'll explain a bit more about how we do this in the next episode. I hope you found that helpful. For more information about the live and recorded training I offer, just email me at ray.middleton@ladderforlife.com and sign up for my free trauma informed course by clicking the link in the description comments. Subscribe for more helpful videos and post a question in the comments and I'll reply.